Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Rope Podcast. This is season 9, episode 12. We're here to talk with Rob Rosen, author of a new release, DB and Me. Let's find out what that's all about. Multi-award winning and best-selling author, editor, anthologist. I almost said archaeologist when I first did a practice read of this, by the way. Rob Rosen is the author of Sparkle, the queerest book you'll ever love, Divas Las Vegas, Hot Lava, Southern Fried, Queerwolf, Vamp, Queens of the Apocalypse, Creature Comfort, Fate, Midlife Crisis, Fierce, and God Belched, Mary, Queen of Scots, Ted of the Ubervilles. Boy, I did much better in my practice read. Ted of the Ubervilles, Sort of the Dead, Genie and a Vodka Bottle, Bobby Ray Breaks the Universe, and now the forthcoming DB and Me. His short stories have appeared in more than 200 anthologies. You can read some of his best ones in Short Spurts 2, and Short Spurts 3. He also is the editor of Lust in Time, Erotic Romance Through the Ages, Men of the Manor, Best Gay Erotica 2015, and Best Gay Erotica of the Year, volumes 1, 2, 3, and 4. Rob, welcome back to the show.
Thanks. It's great to be back. It's been a hot minute.
Yeah, just a couple. So before we get into the dive into DB and Me, which I have a ton of questions, why don't you just explain for people who maybe didn't catch your first time you were on the show, how you got into writing and this whole gay erotica and romance and
Uh,
stuff that you're involved with.
yeah. It's funny. Back in the 90s, when there was a huge boom in the gay fiction industry where everyone was publishing gay fiction, and you could go to any bookstore and find new titles daily.
Hmm.
I was reading it all, all the greats, Paul Monet and Felice Picano and all of them. There's just a huge
Right.
list of them. Christopher Bram, a lot of them still writing.
Yeah. Gordon
Uh,
Merrick was one of my favorites from the era.
yeah. And so, but I didn't like most of what I was reading because I was in my 20s. These books are written by people in their 40s. These people had gone through an AIDS crisis that I didn't necessarily go through. A lot of the books were sad. A lot of the books were, um, you know, I didn't choose to be gay. If I had a choice, I wouldn't be gay. That kind of thing. Like it was very negative. Um, and so I thought, if I ever wrote a book, I would be like, it's so cool to be gay. I would only ever choose to be gay. Being gay is the way.
Yeah.
So when I got my first PC, I started writing a book, and 6 months later, I had a novel, and 3 months after that, I had a printed novel, and I thought I
You were
just
in the
sat down to
pool with all the big fish.
yeah, it was called Sparkle, the queerest book you'll ever love. I did my own California book tour. It did really well. In fact, I re-released it as a 10-year anniversary book, and
Oh, cool.
stayed the number one gay fiction humor book and the number one gay fiction, what's the other word for humor on Amazon? Comedy book for 6 months straight. It was the number one on Amazon in those two little tiny mini micro genres.
Right.
But I really just set out to write one book and then never stopped writing, like just 25 years straight of writing. And how I got into erotica was strictly by, we're going to call it fate, because I never wanted to write erotica. I didn't think I had anything to add to the genre. I thought it had all been written. And I wrote one piece of erotica. It was called Go Fuck Yourself. And I turned it in. I can't remember the name of the publisher. They're long defunct, like most publishers.
Yeah,
Uh,
unfortunately.
it was Ian Phillips and Greg Wharton. Do you remember? Did you know Ian and Greg?
Hmm.
They, yeah. So they had an online website of dark fiction. They turned the story down for the anthology I submitted it to, but they accepted it for their online fiction site. And a month later, editor of Men Magazine contacted me and said, "Hey, I read your story. Would you like to write for Men Magazine?" Now, for those of you who don't remember, Men Magazine, also long defunct. It was the number one selling men, boy magazine
Yeah.
on the shelves all over
Right.
the world. 100,000 subscribers alone, just in people's homes, but millions sold worldwide. And I said, "Yeah, I'll write for you." Having written one piece of erotic fiction, to be writing for the number one selling men's magazine in the world, and then I wrote for Men Magazine and Freshman Magazine and Two Magazine, which was their bi-monthly magazine, for 5 years until they shut down. And then I had written one novel for Queerest Press, and they said, "Hey, would you like to become the new editor of best erotic fiction, best gay erotic fiction?" And I said, and I had only ever edited one anthology, and this was the largest, gay erotic fiction anthology in the world. It's distributed by Simon and Schuster. It's been the number one selling gay erotic fiction anthology on Amazon every time it's released. I said, "Sure, I'll be the editor." And then I was the 5 times editor of that for 5 years until they closed as well. So they still do best lesbian erotic fiction, by the way, because that still sells really, really well.
Yeah. Yeah.
It all kind of fell into my lap. It was the universe, going go Rob,
Right. 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 Author
and
serendipity on steroids.
and why this matters to the conversation. And I did have something to add to the genre because I am primarily a gay comic romance writer. Short stories, novels, they're all gay comic romances. And that's what I added to Erotica. And that is what the editors and the publishers really liked because nobody was doing that.
Right.
Nobody writes funny smut. And I love funny smut. So it all worked in my favor. And all my novels are kind of funny smut.
Excellent. Excellent. I love that. It's funny when we began this whole little segment here, you had mentioned Felice Picano and all the rest of them that had written, Andrew Holleran, I think was another, was the whole Velvet quill, or violet quill gang. But it's really funny because when I came up, I had Gordon Merrick for the romance part of it. And the other side of it, I had John Retchie. Those were my two go-tos. So one was all the lustful and sexy kind of stuff, the erotica, who I think he's still, like, for me, the epitome of poetic erotica, because his visuals in the book, like especially in Numbers and in the City Nights, those two are just, for me, were just mind-blowing when I was a young gay kid, teen, I should say teen, not kid, but teen, and discovered them in the bookstore, and here I am, sweating, reading next to the gardening section, because I didn't want to get discovered reading it. So yeah, it's really interesting because we had those shifts in queer literature through this, from like the 70s when Gordon Merrick started to come up in the New York Times bestseller list, which is really amazing to think about at that era that he was hitting that book list. And then you had the shift into what was happening with the AIDS and all the stuff going on there, Larry Kramer and the rest of them, which was important to write about. But you're right. It's like there were definite blocks of what happened in queer literature. Then you found yourself at the tail end of that and then found your way into a niche that hadn't been kind of mined yet. You know what I mean? So maybe you are an archaeologist now that I think about it.
I mean, back in the 80s, there would have been Robert Rhodey. There was like a whole slew of comic writers. But if you read like earlier than the 80s, if you read Quentin Crisp, The Naked Civil Servant, if you read Gore Vidal, The City and the Pillar, these were New York Times bestsellers, and they were depressing as hell. Like, yes, you might have been a gay man living in middle America who didn't know that there were other gay men out there. But if you read these books, you would have been like, "Oh, I better stay closeted because there's nothing good for me out there." And then look what happened to Gore Vidal. Gore Vidal was blacklisted for much of his career. So anyway,
Yeah.
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 And
No, no,
then
absolutely. So let's get to your new release, the why we're here to talk about it. DB and Me, fictionalized events of what happened to DB Cooper after he lands. Now, I have questions. I have so many questions of how and why DB, where did that get plucked from obscurity? And because I mean, most of the kids nowadays would have no idea who you're talking about, you know?
you don't think that his legacy still lives on, that the mystery of him, in fact, he's been in the news lately because someone thinks that with DNA testing, they might be able to find him because he left a cigarette on the plane. And now
Right.
there's a
Yeah, I've seen
chance
that. Yeah.
that they can go through the military records and possibly find him. And
I don't know when you think about the kids now, and I'm literally the children out there who, if it's not Riri or Beyonce or if it's not attached to one of their divas, they're kind of like, like, So
oh
I'm kind
no.
of like, that's why I thought when I saw DB, I mean, for me, it's interesting. I love it. It's a neat angle. It's a really really cool angle that I was just blown away when I realized who you were writing about. But then I thought about it, I'm like, well, will the kids know who because they're just so tied into TikTok and all that other stuff, and I just was wondering what sparked you to go down that road.
And hey, are the kids reading novels anymore anyway? Right. So like,
Well, yeah, that's
I'm
true. That's
probably
true. I have my
writing for it.
granddaughter who's queer. She prefers physical books. She doesn't
Oh,
like
good.
to read on like a Kindle or something like that. So, there are a few out there that are, starting to go old school.
I think the reason why I wrote it is because it was an easy topic. Like nobody knows who he was, so he could be anyone, right?
True. True.
So why not be a gay man?
Right.
And and also, um, I I thought in my head I knew a way to make his story um, relevant, and also how to give him an ending. Like in my head, I knew how to
Mm.
give him an ending, like, and why he was never found. And
Aha.
so the story, it has multiple plot lines, but one of it is why he was never found, and the genius of DB Cooper. So yes, it
And
was an
because
easy, it was not a difficult storyline to come up with, because
right.
nobody knows who he
No,
is.
absolutely. It's so vague in so many ways that it's almost like, well, why hasn't anybody else thought of this before? You know what I mean? It's kind of was just sitting there. That's why I love the genius of it. But I just was, I juxtapose that with the kids going, oh, yeah, but if it didn't happen in the last 5 minutes, I'm not interested. But I think for people our age and maybe a few generations later, I think they probably would be very interested in something like this because it is kind of one of those great mysteries of life that was never really resolved you know yeah and plus the fact I was going to say earlier that given the time that it happened, the period that it happened, you would have a reason if you were queer not to have that be part of the narrative
Mm-hmm.
because it really wasn't socially fully acceptable. We were at the beginning of gay pride and all of that stuff was just coming up, civil gay rights movement was coming up and that kind of stuff. So it is kind of interesting to see that it was just ripe for the picking and you were smart enough to grab it.
And then, and to go back to what you just said, I actually did go to Amazon to make sure nobody had written the story before, and I didn't find any works of fiction. Uh, what happened after he landed? But really, such an easy thing to like come up with. So I was shocked as well that I might be the only one that did it,
And
especially
that's
from
what you
the
want.
angle I took.
That's what you want. You want
That's right.
fertile ground that nobody's trod on. So that's
That's right.
cool. So what kind of facts did you have to work with that you decided to employ to kind of create your iteration of who he was?
Right. So, there's like a limited amount of facts that are out there. There's the what he looked like generally. There's what he left on the plane. There's how he escaped from the plane. There's speculation that he was probably in the military, probably a paratrooper. Um, they did find money in a river 10 years later or whatever it was. And so every fact that there was about DB Cooper is in the book, but they're all played to DB's advantage, not disadvantage. I figured DB Cooper was probably a genius. Uh, he came up with this and he succeeded. So he had to have been a smart man. So what if he planted everything? What if he designed this escape that clues would be found out about him that would lead everyone in the wrong direction,
Right.
right?
Right.
And then and that's what I did. Now, but the book is he lands and then he lands right into another mystery that he couldn't have foreseen. Like he foresaw everything about his future, except except that his whole life would change when he landed unexpectedly.
Ah, excellent. I love that. Plot twist.
Plot twist.
So what made you decide to go down a non-comedic route in doing this kind of thing?
Right. So I've written 17 novels. They've all been romantic comedies. And though it pained me not to write a romantic comedy, my brain just goes that way. If I even
Right.
try to veer off, I can't. But this story did not lend itself to comedy at
Right.
all. So there's snarky dialogue in the book, but there's no comedy. And also, the book is set against the Vietnam War and the end of the Vietnam War and DB Cooper's involvement in it and his age um, so I wanted the book to not only be a romance, but I wanted it to be a book about obsession, about finding first love. And my two main characters, DB, whose real name is Tim, and Adam, they meet and they immediately are connected through these mysteries. And they find that they've never had love. They've never been able to, they were in the military. They had to hide who they were their whole lives. And then they come to this realization that they don't want that anymore. And so there's this sexual obsession that, like when you're a gay man and you meet another gay man and you maybe fall in love or whatever, you want sex all the time.
Right. Right.
And so this book does that. And, like to me, it was very profound. Like it wasn't sex for the sake of just having sex. It was the sake of falling in love and being obsessed with someone else and trying to get out of difficult situations, which are the plot lines of the book.
Right. And
And so,
well, I just want to jump in here real quick, just for the kids, the children who might be listening to and deciding to read your book. That you need to know that one of the genius things that Rob is proposing here is that it is literally the fact that because of the era that you think, oh, how difficult it must have been to be queer in that time. And there's a great documentary called Coming Out Under Fire. So if kids want to kind of like expand their knowledge of what Rob's talking about here, definitely check that out, because I think it'll give you a good foundation for how queer people existed in those times. You have Fellow Travelers, which kind of touches on it a little bit with Hawk, but it is, again, it's fertile ground for writing, because not many of our stories were told. Only in later in their lives did they start to tell these stories in documentaries. So I love the fact that your book is actually dealing with that as well. There's an element to that with the whole military aspect that that probably should be written more about.
it's actually a huge part of the book. Their being in the military and how it affected them and how it affected them as gay men. So yeah.
Excellent. So is this like a one-off serious novel?
Yeah, you know what I probably, but you know what I also thought would be fertile ground in this exact same way are the two guys that escaped from Alcatraz.
Oh,
Look where they escaped
I
to,
know exactly.
right into San Francisco. So that would also be something you could. It could be like the exact same plot line, how they disappeared, But I don't know. I think for me, they would disappear into the world of drag. Like
Right.
they'd become
Girl, you
drag
need a
queens.
towel. Come on.
Yeah. So yes, maybe. It's not that I did. That's not that I didn't enjoy writing a non-comic book, but it didn't give me the same joy.
Mm,
It gave me joy to write the story. I love writing the story, but it wasn't. I like to laugh when I'm writing,
yeah.
and I couldn't do that here.
Well, I think also it probably was one of those, queer bucket lists for writers to do something out of the norm of what you're known for. You know what I mean? I mean,
Yeah.
even Anne Rice, did all of her, dark erotica stuff under a different pen name. And, and so
Right.
it was something that she did aside from what she was doing with her supernatural stuff. But, so all authors tend to like to dabble at least once outside and go, well, what's this like? So, at least if anything, you check that box now. You can go back to what you were
Right.
doing before.
Well, and if you're a fan of my work, you would know that like I have written in every genre. I write about zombies, werewolves, vampires, detectives, drag queens, aliens. I've done every genre. It's just I do it in a comic way.
Right, right, right. Excellent. Um, Anything else you want readers or potential readers to know about what this is all about that we didn't cover?
No, I don't think so. It's a great book. It's got 4.5 stars on Amazon and 4.5 stars on Goodreads. It's doing well for itself. I'm very happy. It seems like the readers are really psyched to see what happened to DB Cooper.
Excellent.
They're just as surprised.
Love that. Love that. All right. Well, you ready for our RFQs for this year?
Are what?
RFQs are get to know you questions.
Sure, yes, please.
That's the rapid fire questions.
Yes,
That's what
please.
RFQ stands for. All right. So, in this year of diving deeper, what is your favorite writing snack or drink?
So almost all my novels are written in coffee shops, except during COVID. So we'll go with coffee.
Okay. All right. Works for me. What books did you read growing up?
Oh, Judy Blume like was my was my go-to. Yeah, and I have been an avid reader my entire life. So you name it, I've read it.
Love it. Okay. Well, who's been the biggest supporter of your writing?
Well, my husband, the poor guy,
I know.
has had to sit through so many book readings. Oh God, and not just mine, but my friends. I'll give you. I have to say, listening to other people read is about as fun as watching grass grow. Like I just do not enjoy it, and I like to read my own stuff. That's fun, but watching other people read, I zone out. I can't follow it. So
So look for
imagine
Rob
him.
and then latest tour when somebody else is reading.
I know, right? But can you imagine my poor husband had to go through all this
Yeah.
for 25 years?
I'm the same way. I think Vance said it one time before too. Yeah, we definitely have to give it to our husbands. All right. Are you a morning person or a night owl?
Very much a morning person.
Oh, I'm exactly the opposite. So we would be changing shifts. All right. What is your favorite hobby outside of writing?
Um, Probably travel. I like to explore the world, and I think that's helped me in my writing. A lot of my books have taken place in places that I've traveled to.
Excellent. Okay. Well, it's a good way to broaden your writing scopes and actually, hone your craft, so that's perfect. Has writing and publishing a book changed the way you see yourself?
Um, no, see myself? No, I don't think so. I mean, it is a major accomplishment to do what I did, and so I'm proud of myself. And I've met some amazing people along the way. I think that's the coolest part. Like, the reason I got into writing is because I read Felice Picano, and the very first person I met in this industry was Felice Picano. And
Oh,
Felice
excellent.
Picano, yeah, we've done many, many book readings together. I have edited Felice Picano. I mean,
Wow.
it's a miracle. That kind
Yeah.
of stuff doesn't happen to a lot of people. So,
Yeah. It's lovely that you get to work with some of your heroes in it.
idols. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Okay. If you were to write a spin-off about a side character in one of your books, who would you pick and why?
So I wrote a book 2 books ago, 3 books ago, 4 books ago. I have no clue. It's called And God Belched. It's about two universes that collide into each other in this space-time continuum. And one of the characters is able to make a bridge between the two universes. And for years, like 5, 6 years, I've always wanted to write a character called Tag Hoyer, like the watch, Tag Hoyer. I just thought, what a cool character's name,
Yeah.
Tag
Yeah. No.
Hoyer.
Yeah.
And
Uh-huh.
that is how it's pronounced. Heuer is Hoyer. pretty sure it's something like that. And so it took me 6 years to find a book to write this character. And so in this book, and God Belched, he is a self-aware watch. Uh, and he's the only self-aware watch on this planet. But not designed that way. And I thought his character would be a great book all on his own, finding humanity as a self-aware watch. He can project his images other than a watch, by the way.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
There's not much ambulatory.
Yes, he can project himself as
okay.
whatever he wants.
Okay.
Yes, but he's self-aware. He doesn't want to die, so.
Yeah. Excellent. Love that. Okay. Have you ever traveled as a researcher for your book? Well, I think we answered that one.
Yeah, I have a book. This was 2 books ago called Genie in a Vodka Bottle. And a large part of it takes place in southern Spain and Gibraltar. And I've been to southern Spain and Gibraltar, and so my travel was completely helped design that storyline.
Excellent. Okay, and finally, how do you celebrate when you finish a book?
I don't know. After 25 years, I just keep writing. You get a little bit jaded. It's fun when the box comes from your publisher and there's a box of all of your books there. But then now I cannot tell you how many books I have in my closet, because I also have written for over 200 anthologies, and they all send me books as well. So I have like this just boxes of free books. If you guys want it, come over. Come over and get them.
Come to my library.
Yeah, right. Yes. Oh,
Maybe
well, when I
start a lending library, we're a lending library.
It's I know it sounds bad to say you get jaded by it, but when you've seen your name on a cover so many times, it is fun. Don't get me wrong, and I do appreciate it, but I don't really celebrate. I just keep moving on to the next one.
Hey, one author we asked this question to said that they, go out and get a good Mexican dinner. I'm like, I'm down. That works for me.
Yeah, I mean, to be perfectly honest, I'm not writing to be published. I'm not writing for the reader. I'm not writing for the publisher or the reviewer. I write because I love to write. Like, it brings me joy. It's very easy for me. I write like I breathe because I have to. Like it is who I am, and so I am my happiest when I'm creating. So the book is just icing on the cake.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. That part right there, because I'm a huge Hitchcock fan, and for Hitch, his favorite part was the drafting of everything, the creation of it. By the time he got to the set, he was bored stiff. He already wanted to go on to something else, which is kind of in line with your book coming to you in a box. Kind of cool, wonderful, but you're already on to something else that you're creating, because the creation, that's the fun part. That's the part where you get to really play, So excellent. Love that. Well, you made it through the list. See? Wasn't so hard. All right. So what's coming up next for you? What release, got anything in the works now you want to talk about briefly?
Nope.
To titillate readers, or, on any kind of readings you're going to be doing?
I don't think so. No, I just started promoting this book. It's only been out a month, so I don't have anything definite yet. I have things in the pipeline. That's how it goes in this industry. Right. And in terms of writing, I've kind of taken a little break. It's been a long journey, and I need to refresh a little.
All right. So where can people keep up, and where's the best place to keep up with what you're doing?
Goodreads is where I pretty much put everything. Or my publisher, JMS Books, had the greatest publisher in the world. In fact, I used to have 4 or 5 different publishers, and they've all folded. And JMS took all of my books that I've ever written except one. And Clea still exists, and so all of the Erotica.
They just narrowed their publishing down to doing the lesbian stuff, isn't it? Pretty much.
Yeah, they don't do a lot of gay fiction anymore. But JMS took all my novels except what Clea owns, so that was really great, and so everything is on there.
Okay, excellent. All right. Well, any final words of wisdom?
I don't think so. If you guys have a dream and have a desire to create, I strongly encourage you to do it. Even if you fail, you've succeeded, because there's the joy of creating is all that really matters.
Excellent. I love that. And especially in this era where our rights are being challenged again, our voices are more important than ever. So get out there, kids. Start doing this stuff. All right. We'd like to thank Rob Rosen for coming back to the show and discussing his latest release, DB and Me. Definitely check it out. Sounds like a great read. I can't wait to pick it up. So check that out, and we will be back again with another wonderful author or content creator that we want to bring to your attention. So until then, we'll talk to you soon. Bye now.
Oh, what's that? Closing time. The bums rush in melody, dear.